Now, Labor's Treasury spokesman Chris Bowen will today examine the case slashing income tax rates when the budget returns to surplus. Speaking at the National Press Club, he will discuss Labor's plan to keep a deficit levy in place for high-income earners, along with the Medicare levy, which could see a top marginal tax rate of 49.5 cents if they win the next election. Now, that tax cut element is likely to be music to the ears of Liberal Democrat David Leyonhjelm, but not the 49.5% tax rate. Joining me now is Senator David Leyonhjelm. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can I just kick off by asking you about these reports first out of the United States that Donald Trump may have shared classified information with Russia that was not shared with Five Eye allies, including Australia. Would that be a concern if Donald Trump was disclosing that information but not to us?
Well, no, I don't think so. Ultimately, you know, who's the boss? Who decides what's classified and what isn't? He's not answerable to the intelligence community, he's their boss. So if he decides something isn't classified or it can be shared with somebody, then that's his call, that's not anybody else's call. And whether or not he should share it with us or any of the other Five Eyes before he does that is again his call. I don't think that's a matter of concern. I'll just point out to you that the Washington Post, the New York Times and CNN, which are running with this story hard, I don't think they've ever said a good thing about Trump from before he was elected up to now. They are the equivalent of Fairfax and the ABC in terms of their attitude to the Democrats and Trump. You know, they're not Trump fans, if I can put it that way.
Sure, but these reports have also suggested that the US president raised the idea of jailing journalists for the leak of classified information. I mean, would you support journalists being put in jail if they were involved in, you know, whistleblowing or the leaking of classified information?
That's a complicated question, and obviously under certain circumstances, if it jeopardised national security or jeopardised the lives of their fellow countrymen, then there's an offence committed and they need to pay the consequences for that. There are other times when a journalist can divulge information that's it's in the national interest to be divulged, and it's a question of judgment. I don't think there's a black and white answer in those cases. My general preference is to err on the side of transparency, to take the side of the journalists in most cases, but you know, not all journalists are innocent and have pure motives either.
Okay, well, let's go to this issue of the welfare bill and this discussion around tax hikes. The government has told us that they have to put up taxes because the Senate won't pass the savings that they were looking at. Now, I know that you've had a look at the welfare bill, particularly as it applies to non-citizens, and think that there's a little bit of fat that could be cut there. Tell us about what's going on in the budget in this area.
What the government is saying is complete unmitigated bullshit, to use a technical term. There is plenty of scope for cutting welfare in the budget without putting up taxes. And this story that it's all about the Senate, that they can't get stuff through the Senate, you know, those zombie measures, as they're called, those measures from the 2014 budget, most of them weren't even presented to the Senate in the first place. They just, you know, did a head count and decided it wasn't worth putting them up and having them defeated. They've never been brought back to the new Senate. Never even attempted to bring them back to the new Senate, just concluded that they weren't going to get them through. Now, they have been better at getting stuff through the new Senate. The new Senate is a little more amenable to getting stuff through. Still not, you know, not government-oriented, I suppose. But I think it's a sign of weakness, it's a sign of failure that they don't even try, they don't even give it a serious go, but they blame the Senate, and really it's Labor, the Greens and some of the crossbench that they're blaming.
So you think that they've dumped some of these measures for political reasons, for their own personal popularity, rather than an analysis that they can't be got through the Senate?
Yes, I think they're blaming the Senate for basically stealing Labor's policies. You know, they've grabbed Gonski, they've grabbed the NDIS, Medicare, and said, OK, if we can't beat them, join them. and said, well, why are we doing that? Well, because the Senate is just so uncooperative, we've got no alternative. That's what we've got to do.
I want to get to this issue that you've done some work with the Parliamentary Budget Office showing that there's billions of dollars of welfare being paid to non-citizens. Now, how is that occurring? Presumably some of that money would be going, for example, to people who are in Australia on bridging visas. That's understandable, particularly if some of them have restrictions on how much they can work. But how much are we spending in the welfare area on people that aren't actually Australian citizens?
Well, the total is about $15 billion per year, and it is going up. Of that, about 710,000, according to the PBO, are not from countries where we have a reciprocal welfare arrangement. So that means if we go to those countries, we don't get welfare and vice versa. So that's the largest proportion of the 870,000 people, I think it is, in total. 160,000 or so are from countries where we have a reciprocal welfare agreement, but those agreements only relate to age pensions, I think, and disability or something like that. So that $15 billion still includes the welfare that those people are receiving, excluding the reciprocal agreements. Now, there's probably some cases where they're perfectly legitimate. Refugees, for example, they're often illiterate. They're not equipped to join the job market. They've got to be supported. We welcome them into the community. We pay welfare for them. So we're not quibbling about that. But there's nowhere near 870,000 refugees.
So you think there's a way to trim that. Now, what do you think is going to happen with this Medicare levy idea? We've had the Labor Party say that they support the idea of a Medicare levy, but not for people earning between $27,000 a year and $87,000 a year. They only want this new impost to kick in after $87,000. The Treasurer has said, well, I'm prepared to hold out to see if I can apply this tax increase to everyone. What's your position going to be, and what do you think will happen in the Senate, given that the Greens, as I understand it, are also asking for some costings from the Parliamentary Budget Office about having an income threshold that's a bit higher?
Well, my position is very clear. I'll never vote for an increase in taxes or reduction in liberty. I've said that for the last 3 years. What do I think will happen in the Senate? I think the government will stand firm. I think they will be able to say, well, to Labor, well, if you don't support this increase in the Medicare levy, you obviously don't care about the disabled and the NDIS, because allegedly, although hypothecation of funding is not permitted, allegedly the additional revenue raised from the Medicare levy is going to fund the NDIS, and the government has said it will be fully funded. Labor never fully funded it. Therefore, Labor is squibbing the whole issue of funding the NDIS. So I think they'll use that as a stick to beat Labor. Well, whether Labor stands firm or not and says, well, if it's not applied to only the higher income people, we won't vote for it at all, that's a good question. I don't think they've made a decision about that at this point, but I feel as if the government will stand firm. So unless Labor changes its position, it'll come down to the crossbench in the Senate.
Senator, moving on from the budget, I just wanted to get your take. You would have seen this story today out of Western Sydney that a council-run public pool has installed a modesty curtain so Muslim women can swim there. Just wanted to see what you thought about this move.
This is an unfortunate trend. You know, we have an open liberal democracy where we treat women and men as having equal opportunity. Some women argue for equality on all fronts, although a lot of women don't even want that. But certainly we don't treat women as as a threat, as a temptation or something like that. They're entitled to wear what they like, and they're entitled to mix with men and swim, for example, at a pool on equal terms. This idea that we should adopt the values of other countries, of other cultures and so forth, is very alien to most Australians. I don't think most people would be at all comfortable about it. I don't think it's a healthy direction at all. You know, we should respect other cultures. There's no question we should respect other cultures. But we don't have to adopt them, we don't have to incorporate them into our own culture. We do have an Australian culture. We should be proud of it and not back off from it.
Okay, Liberal Democrat Senator David Leyonhjelm, thanks a lot for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll have more on Chris Bowen's budget reply address from the Press Club live and in full later today. The Shadow Treasurer due to take it to his feet at 12:30 Eastern. Coverage and analysis here on Channel 601 and over on Business on Channel 602.